A very good evening to all of you. I welcome you all to the ICANN initiative, the Hindu and Indian Express analysis. So today we will start the day with a concept that I would like to share with you all, which is called as the hourglass concept. So this is very relevant for you all, particularly the prelims approaching now. So this concept I read way back in a book that's titled Stop Worrying and Start Living by Dale Carnegie. So what this concept says is, if you closely observe an hourglass, so you see that the sand particles they fall from the top portion to the bottom portion. So how much, no matter how many sand particles are there in the top portion, but there is this construction that is there in the middle. And when the sand particles approach the construction, they go one particle at a time to the bottom part. So no matter how many particles are there, when they pass through the construction, only one particle goes at a time. This is very similar to people doing work in a day. So we may be faced with a lot of tasks that we need to get accomplished in a particular day. We may have to do some 20 to 30 tasks a day. But however, what is more important is it will all happen only when we take one task at a one point of time. So if we start multitasking thinking that that will be more effective, that is not going to happen. We will just be increasing the amount of time that is required to complete the independent tasks. So what we need to understand, particularly with the prelims approaching and the given the volume and the length of the syllabus and how much we have to be studying for prelims, we all get confused that whenever I'm studying current affairs, I feel like studying the static. I feel very scared my static is not getting covered. Similarly, when I'm doing that, somehow the worry of mains and lack of answer writing practice creeps in my mind. So like this, there are so many things that anxieties that we go through in a day, particularly when the exams are approaching. But it's always very important to remember that it will all happen, but everything cannot happen at once. So you have to focus on the task that you have taken. Your 100% focus should be there on that task. Get it accomplished as soon as possible with all the productivity and efficiency, and then move on to the next task. So keep this concept in mind for the purpose of your exam. Now go to the prelims theme of the day. And yesterday's I think Suchandana Baman Roy has written good answers, so you can refer to that answer. And today we'll be talking about again polity, again because we have not discussed much of polity, not covered much of polity in the prelims. So first you will have to find out about the emergencies. So there are mainly three types of emergencies. So these types, what does each of these type mean, and what is a procedure for declaring each type of the emergency, what conditions need to be satisfied, whose approval is needed, within what time limit. Everything needs to be covered under these three kinds of emergencies. Next is you'll also have to cover what the types of writs. There are various types of writs like the habeas corpus, the mandamus certiorari, quo warranto and all that. So all of these types of writs, and what is the difference, who can issue the writs, against whom, for violation of what. So all these details regarding the writs is very important. The minor differences between some of these writs is again very important. So that also you should keep in mind. Otherwise you may lose marks in negative marking. Now we'll move on to the first topic of the day, which is related to governance in Delhi. So related to this Delhi statehood and the issue that was happening between the state government and the lieutenant governor, there was also a mains question that was asked in I think 2016 or so. So definitely this issue has been there, and it's very important from the exam point of view. So this is your GS 2 paper syllabus. So what this whole article was trying to tell is that there is several time difference of opinion in the Delhi state, between the Delhi state government and the lieutenant governor. So let's analyze this article. So first, you know that Delhi was actually a union territory. So then in the 1990s, by introducing Article 239A and AB, it got the status of a national capital territory of Delhi that has its own legislator and that has a state government that is elected purely by the people of Delhi. So this provision was introduced in the Articles 239AA and 239AB. So this gave birth to the National Capital Territory of Delhi. So under this system, there is a lieutenant governor who is usually a nominee of the center who represents the center, and there is a state government that is duly elected by the people of Delhi. So more often than not, there is a difference of opinion between the lieutenant governor on the one hand and the state government on the other hand. So this has led to a lot of tussles between the two and has led to poor government Delhi. So the reason, one of the most important reasons for the tussle emerges from Article 239 AA Proviso 4. So what this provision says is that if the lieutenant governor is not he has a different opinion about some decision that is taken by the state government, then he can refer the matter to the president, and then president will take a decision on that matter. So when any matter or any decision of the state government has been referred by the lieutenant governor to the president, then the state government cannot implement its own decisions. So this has been particularly provided to ensure that on some of the important constitutional issues, if the state government is taking some decision and which may appear to be contrary in interest of the public, then the lieutenant governor, being the representative of the union, must have a chance to refer the matter to the president so that the national priorities are maintained. So the whole purpose of this proviso was that. But however, what has happened in actual practice is the lieutenant governor more often than not refers not just the important decisions, but even the routine administrative decisions are referred by the lieutenant governor to the president. So this will frustrate the state government, as the state government will not be able to implement those decisions, and those decisions taken by the state government would be void then. So this has led to a lot of tussle between the lieutenant governor and the state government. And in recent case, this has happened related to the appointment of the prosecutors. So we had read about the Delhi riots that happened in Delhi following the protests for the against the Citizenship Amendment Act. So now in order to fight this case, the Delhi government had to appoint some prosecutors. So the Delhi government appointed the prosecutors, but the lieutenant governor was not in agreement with this appointment list of the state government. So he did not agree with the prosecutors, the list of the prosecutors proposed by the state government. So therefore, he referred the matter to the president. So this way, the list that was prepared by the state government of the prosecutors will now stand cancelled. And also under this article 239 AA Proviso 4, there is one more thing which says that if the lieutenant governor feels that the matter is very urgent, in that case, the lieutenant governor cannot wait till the president takes a decision in such case. So if the matter is urgent, then the lieutenant governor is also empowered to take immediate action. So in this case, the lieutenant governor has told that he doesn't agree with the list of prosecutors prepared by the state government. He prepared a separate list, and therefore the list prepared by the state government has now got cancelled. So what this issue is reflecting is, in what matters can the lieutenant governor, what kind of matters can the lieutenant governor refer to the president? Can he refer both the routine administrative matters to the president, or can he only refer some constitutionally important matters to the president? So the spirit of the article says that those constitutionally important matters must be referred to the president. But however, what has happened in practice is even the routine matters are getting referred to the president, thereby frustrating the efforts of the state government in getting anything done. So such tussle between the state government and the lieutenant governor have happened even in the past. So when this particular case went to the Supreme Court, the Supreme gave its judgment in the NCT of Delhi versus Union of India case in the year 2018. So as a part of this judgment, the Supreme Court made some gave the judgment and also laid down some guidelines on how the relation between the two should be. So the first thing is related to the Article 239 AA Proviso 4. This article says that on any matter on which the lieutenant governor has a difference of opinion with the state government, he can refer that matter to the president. So the article says any matter on which the lieutenant governor has a difference of opinion. So the Supreme Court has underlined this word any matter and stressed upon this word and has said that any matter does not mean every matter. So any matter the Lieutenant Governor can refer to the President does not mean that the Lieutenant Governor can refer every single matter to the President. So this is one thing that the Supreme Court held in this particular case. Second is on which matter the should be referred to the President. On that, the Lieutenant Governor has to apply his mind. Not that any matter, every matter that is coming to him, and not the routine administrative matters that is coming to him, they should not be referred to the President for his consideration. So, on what matters should be referred by the Lieutenant Governor to the President? For that, there has to be application of mind by the Lieutenant Governor. The third thing that the Supreme Court held in this particular judgment is that there needs to be a harmonious relationship between the Lieutenant Governor on the one hand and the state government on the other. So, by harmonious relation, what the court meant is the court underlined the principles of cooperative federalism. The court underlined the principles of pragmatic federalism and also constitutional balance, constitutional morality. So, what the court holds is that when even if the Lieutenant Governor has the power to refer the matter to the President, then he has to exercise constitutional morality. He has to apply his mind, and only those matters which are constitutionally important should be referred to the President. So this is what the court has said, and also the scheme of things are that itself is such that the Delhi government has the power to execute, to take decisions on all the matters. The executive power of the state government of Delhi can exercise on all the matters except the land, public order, and police. So, in such cases, the central government should not unnecessarily interfere through this office of Lieutenant Governor. So, this is what the Supreme Court has held in this particular case. So, you can quote this case and you can say that as a conclusion that there must be harmonious relationship that is based on the principles of cooperative and pragmatic federalism and constitutional morality, and there must be application of mind on part of the Lieutenant Governor whenever deciding whether a matter has to be referred to the President, and on the part of the state government must also understand the special status of Delhi as a national capital territory, and therefore it has its own limitations within which it has to operate. So now with the next topic, which is related to the role of ASHA workers. So ASHA workers have been playing a tremendous role in delivery of various services at the grassroots. So they have acted as a last mile connectivity for the delivery of services and welfare schemes to the people at the grassroots. So you may have a question like critically analyze the role of ASHA workers who have been acting as a last mile connectivity in delivering various welfare services to the people. So in this case, you will have to mention the role that ASHA workers have played. For instance, they deliver contraceptive to the doorstep so that there is spacing between the birth. They also encourage women to take up healthy dietary practices for taking care of the child as well as for them, what nutritions should be taken. So they help both the pregnant mothers and they also help the lactating mothers. So apart from this, they have also been looking after the vaccination. So when the children are supposed to get vaccinated, are they getting vaccination properly according to the schedule or not? So all of this is looked after by the ASHA workers. And now during the present time of COVID, these ASHA workers have been at the forefront of detecting and referring the suspected cases. So they have been delivering the services in spite of the fact that they have all not been given so much of personal protective equipments. In spite of that, they have been doing a great job. So in spite of all these, the ASHA workers face several issues. First is that they receive a nominal honorarium of just rupees 4,000 per month plus some extra that they get for the other duties that they do. And now in the recent example that this article mentioned was related to the ASHA workers in Haryana. So these ASHA workers basically have a phone with them, through which they update all these whatever whenever they go to the houses to deliver the services, welfare services. So they usually update it in their mobiles. So they initially had the 2G mobiles, and now what the government has done is the government of Haryana has issued to these ASHA workers 4G Geo SIM cards, and it has disabled their previous SIMs, and the state government has told them to migrate to the Android phones so that they can do better monitoring of the service delivery that these ASHA workers do. But however, these ASHA workers have been given the 4G SIMs, and many of these ASHA workers don't have a smartphone. So now the government is telling them that they need to buy their smartphones to be able to use these SIMs, and their previous SIMs have also been disabled. So this shows the poor state of affairs of the ASHA workers. While several months of salary has not been paid to the ASHA workers, first of all it is very less, and secondly there is a huge delay in the payment of the salaries, and how can they afford smartphones to use the new SIM cards? So this is like an hindrance in the working of the ASHA workers, which can be quoted in your answers. The next topic we are going to see is related to the classical music. So Pandit Jasraj is in news because recently he passed away at his home in United States after he suffered a cardiac arrest. And when we talk of classical music, he was among those older generation of stalwarts in classical music. He belonged to the generation, apart from Pandit Jasraj, the other notable classical singers have been Kishori Amonkar, Girija Devi, and Bhimsen Joshi. And in your GS1 syllabus, classical music is a very important topic, and you may get a question on contribution by of all of these in the classical music. So we'll see some contribution of Pandit Jasraj. So basically he belongs to a gharana called as a Mewati gharana. Okay, and second thing is he has composed over 300 bandish. And the thirdly, whenever he composes any song, that has a combination of an emotion along with devotion. So he is credited for combining with his classical music the devotion or the element of bhakti as well. So this is one very important contribution of Pandit Jasraj. And he took an emotional approach whenever he was creating classical music, his own creations. Then another important contribution is that he influenced the Romanticist movement that influenced the Khayal vocalism that happened in the 1970s. So whenever he was rendering the Rag Malhar, it was said that it was so beautiful that it could actually cause rain. So his rendition of Rag Malhar was very popular. So you can make a mention of this in your answers. And then also his another contribution was the research he did on the Haveli Sangeet. So he extensively researched on Haveli Sangeet, and he made contributions to this genre of music also. In fact, Haveli Sangeet means that they are sung as hymns, and it's a kind of devotional music which is based on devotion to Lord Krishna's childhood. So he researched the Haveli Sangeet, and he even made contributions to this genre of music. And his biggest contribution was in the formation of Jasrangi. What this Jasrangi is just like Jugalbandi that we have. So this Jasrangi means it is a duet that happens between a male and a female singer, and they have their own different set of accompanishments, that is their own set of instruments. They are sung in different ragas, both the male and the female, that is they sing in different ragas, they sing in their own different scales. But in spite of all this, they two singing by the male and the female, they weave into one another so seamlessly and harmoniously. So this one is the most important contribution of Pandit Jasraj is the Jasrangi. Apart from that, he has received several awards like the Padma Vibhushan, Padma Shri. He has also been given the title of Sangeet Martand, which means the blazing sun of music. And so you can say that, and also as we know that Pandit Jasraj passed away in his United States home, he has also opened school apart from India in Canada and US also. So he was one of those noted singers who took the Hindustani classical music to many foreign shores also in his lifetime. So this again is a very important and immense contribution of Pandit Jasraj. So you can write these set of contributions as points if a question comes on Pandit Jasraj or the contribution to the classical music. And this can also help in your prelims preparation. You may have a question on his contribution as well. So today's these were the other articles that are not important in the newspaper from the exams point of view. So today's prelims question based on current affairs is: the Death Valley National Park of California was in news recently, and why was it in news? So this piece of information was there in today's rather on 18th newspaper itself, on yesterday's newspaper. So you'll have to find this out. And that's it for today. Thank you.